Think of Game of Thrones, that chilling scene when Lady Olenna Tyrell sits silently in King's Landing, listening as Cersei Lannister rants on. In that moment, Olenna's quiet presence says more than words ever could. But have you ever wondered, can silence speak louder than speech? Niccolò Machiavelli, often remembered for razor-sharp advice on cunning speech and bold action, actually believed that true influence often works without a single word. What if the most powerful tool in your arsenal isn't speech at all, but the artful use of silence, presence, and reputation? Today we'll explore Machiavelli's code of influence, revealing how you can dominate without ever opening your mouth. Niccolò Machiavelli, 1469 to 1527, was a diplomat and political thinker in Renaissance Italy, an era of city-state rivalries, shifting alliances, and constant intrigue. After serving Florence's republic in high office, he was exiled when the Medici family returned to power. During his years away from politics, he wrote The Prince, 1513, a concise manual on gaining and maintaining power. Though published posthumously in 1532, its impact was immediate. Machiavelli's blunt pragmatism, the ends justify the means, and better to be feared than loved, stunned readers. Most people focus on the prince's advice about speech, how princes should flatter allies, deceive opponents, and craft persuasive rhetoric. Yet beneath those pages lies a subtler lesson. Sometimes, silence, stillness, and carefully managed reputation wield far greater influence than any speech. In a world where many believe words are power, Machiavelli reminds us that non-verbal signals, gestures, symbols, and reputation often speak more convincingly than oratory. This matters today because in boardrooms and social media alike, our public statements often overshadow the quiet, strategic moves that truly shape opinion. On one hand, conventional wisdom holds that the key to influence is persuasive speech. We celebrate the great orators, Cicero in ancient Rome, Winston Churchill rallying Britain, orators on the TED stage inspiring millions. In politics, charisma and eloquence are equated with authority. If you can't speak convincingly, you can't lead, goes the familiar refrain. Case in point, John F. Kennedy's 1960 debates, where his televised confidence overshadowed Richard Nixon's more detailed policy explanations. The standard lesson: polish your speech, master storytelling, and sway hearts and minds. But on the other hand, a counterpoint emerges. Sometimes silence speaks volumes. Machiavelli observed that when a ruler speaks too often, he reveals his intentions and weakness. He wrote, "Nothing is more useful than silence. When you speak, you risk saying what you shouldn't. A ruler who remains reserved, letting others chatter, preserves mystery." Consider Francisco Sforza, Duke of Milan, ruled 1450 to 1466. He rarely gave grand speeches. Instead, his mere arrival at a city in procession, his silent demeanor, and the lavish public works he sponsored, hospitals, bridges, churches, broadcasted his benevolence and power more effectively than any speech. Similarly, Machiavelli praised Pope Alexander VI's quiet acts. Alexander showered gifts on key cardinals and funded public festivals without grand orations. His reputation, he who gives generously, circulated without him saying a word. On one hand, Machiavelli recognized the role of oratory. Princes should be able to speak and persuade. But on the other, he emphasized that well-timed silence and deliberate action often shape perceptions more profoundly than words. A prudent ruler cannot and ought not to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interest, Machiavelli notes. Yet a single action, well publicized, carries more weight than paragraphs of explanation. Here's the twist. Machiavelli's code of influence shows that speech isn't always the most reliable tool. He instructed princes to use symbols, ceremonies, and public works to cement authority. You can read this two ways. Machiavelli justifies manipulation through spectacle, or Machiavelli reveals the potency of reputation and image beyond rhetoric. In practice, a ruler's silent gestures, the act of appearing in public places, sponsoring a festival, or even imposing decorum, strict dress codes, transmit unspoken messages about power and stability. One personal anecdote from modern business illustrates this well. A startup founder I spoke with once struggled to rally her team with motivational speeches. Whenever morale dipped, she tried pep talks, yet turnover remained high. Then she began working silently, overhauling the company's workspace, installing transparent glass meeting rooms to signal openness, and quietly donating to employee causes. She held few all-hands meetings, but when she did, she let her calm presence and the silent demonstration of her initiative speak. Within months, employee loyalty soared. She hadn't lectured about culture. She'd embodied it. That's Machiavelli's hidden lesson. Actions, especially public, visible actions, often speak far louder than speeches. Another revealing example, Catherine de Medici, 1519 to 1589, queen consort and later regent of France. Renowned for her political acumen, Catherine seldom made grand speeches. Instead, she hosted lavish banquets, commissioned symbolic artworks, and cultivated an aura of mystique. When tensions between Catholics and Huguenots peaked, her public peacetime gestures, praying with nobles, distributing alms dressed in widow's black, shaped opinions more effectively than any declaration. Historians debate whether Catherine orchestrated the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, 1572, but they agree. Her silent manipulation, letting rumor and spectacle swirl, left nobles unsure of her true intentions. This revelation reframes Machiavelli's influence. It's neither purely rhetorical nor purely violent. It's strategic silence amplified by symbolic acts. He argues that a prince must seem merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, and religious, and that he must often have to appear otherwise. In other words, reputation control, the art of appearing virtuous without broadcasting every move, is central. When people see a ruler performing well-publicized acts of charity, they internalize he is merciful, even if he remains silent on controversial policies. Conversely, when a prince remains silent while constructing a fortress, opponents sense mounting strength without words ever being exchanged. Zooming out, Machiavelli's code of influence shaped a lineage of leaders who understood that true authority often works beneath or beyond words. From Louis XIV's grand spectacles at Versailles, he rarely granted audiences but let courtiers queue endlessly, cementing his divine status. To modern CEOs who let financial results speak for themselves while saying little to the press, the art of dominating without speaking remains timeless. It's no accident that in top-secret Silicon Valley boardrooms, founders often communicate through memos and coded emails rather than loud announcements, preserving ambiguity and forcing others to fill gaps with favorable assumptions. Ultimately, Machiavelli teaches us, words are fleeting, reputation endures. You can craft the perfect pitch and charm an investor for an hour, but if your actions, public persona, strategic gestures, symbolic deeds, don't match, the effect crumbles. Conversely, a single well-timed public act, a donation, a procession, a building dedication, can overshadow months of speeches. As Machiavelli himself wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see and few can feel." Niccolò Machiavelli, The Prince, Chapter 18. Next time you prepare for a big meeting or consider how to influence your peers, ask yourself, what am I saying without speaking? Remember that silence, mystery, and symbolic action can be your most powerful tools. In a world where everyone clamors for attention, those who master the art of dominating without speaking will stand apart, unseen, unpredictable, and unchallenged. Seek wisdom.